So one thing's for sure, it's been a crazy few years. Everybody has been through a lot. You all have your own hardships, your own stories. For me, those pandemic years really, really messed me up. And for starters, I was already starting my midlife crisis when the pandemic hit, and COVID shut the world down and pretty much hyper accelerated all of those feelings of midlife crisis, existentialism, end of days, when am I going to die? On top of that, I got cancer in the middle of 2020. But I chose to take the trauma of the last few years and instead turn it into growth. And one of those things that grew stronger in those last few trying years was my marriage. So are there any married people in attendance today? Raise your hands if you're married out there, if you're your partner. Yep. So I'm going to be 25 years married this fall. I've been together with the same person for almost 29 years, and I am 50 years old. So over half of my life has been with the same person, and we haven't killed each other yet. I want to talk today a little bit about marriage, life, and death. And after almost 30 years of being together with the same person, and also some life circumstances over the past few challenging years, I've really gained some perspective that I feel like I need to share. So thanks for taking the time to listen. Remember before you got married? Remember the feeling you had when they looked at you for the first time and they smiled at you and your heart just dropped out of your chest and it landed on the pavement and it bled all over the sidewalk for the whole world to see? You're standing there, you're completely exposed and you're open and bleeding and you're totally vulnerable and you're helpless. Remember the first time you brought them home to your parents or your siblings or your friends and they all gave you the look and they said, you did it. You found that one. Remember your first kiss? Remember that electricity moving up your arm and the hair standing straight up on the back of your neck and the fireworks are going off in your head as you're totally locked in that first moment? In the beginning, that's the way it is. And it's a beautiful thing. But maybe you don't remember all those things anymore because you stopped looking. Because at some point, kids and marriage and work and life, all of these things got in the path and you stop seeing that past. And that's marriage. It happens. And sometimes it takes an act of God, a momentous tragedy to get you to remember those little moments. The moments that nobody else knows about that made you love that person in the first place. The little things that they do that annoy the heck out of you. But at the same time, remind you that you love that person because of their unique annoyances. The moments you see your children born, the moments, first birthday parties and seeing your kids grow up and be successful and be great people. The moments that you and your spouse lived together peacefully and also fought each other, right? All of them, from the little tiniest things to the biggest successes to the screaming matches at each other, from the saddest to the happiest moments. It happens, life happens, and you do it together, and hopefully you love each other enough so you can stay together. And if you do, you probably still forget all those reasons you got together in the first place. But the fact that you're still together, that means something. It means that you want to be with that person. It means that you truly care about that person. It means that this is where you're supposed to be. So at the end of this little talk today, when you get home and you see that person, I want you to reach your hand over to that person and hold it like you did the first night you met. Because tomorrow you could wake up and the world could end. And then, of course, who would be there to annoy the living heck out of you every day for all eternity, right? So the morning of the day I was diagnosed with colon cancer, I was thinking a lot of things. As I was waiting to hear from the doctor, I thought, this is possibly something serious. I thought of my kids. I thought of my wife. I thought about how my life would change. I thought about death. I thought, why me? I thought, why anybody? I'm 50 years old. I thought, is this it? The doctor was very clear, concise. He said, it is cancer and it's big and it's got to come out ASAP. Let's go back to your wedding day. Remember how fast it went? Remember how you don't really remember it at all? It was a blur. That was like the 10 days between diagnosis and my surgery. I didn't know what was going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I was sure that maybe I was going to die. I mean, it was quite an emotional time. So what did I do? Like any man, I want to problem solve. I prepped for my death. I spent 3 days writing a document called Honey, I'm Dead. Here's what you should do now. It included all of my business details, passwords, logins, business bank account names. It included a complete list of everything that she should do to settle the business affairs for me. It included a list of trusted industry friends who I had literally pre-contacted and asked them to step in and help my wife liquefy and end my business should I not make it off that table. And they were really, really weird calls to make to those friends, but I did make them because my intent was that if I should die, they would have a roadmap, my family, of what to do and how to make an easier time of getting past my passing. I later found out it's actually an old Buddhist thought. You give yourself permission to die. But here's what's really interesting after I did all that prep work to make sure my family could easily move on once I was gone. I didn't feel angry about everything. I should have. I could have. What I felt was instead deep calm and content. Because I started to remember. Let me get back to my wedding day and my marriage because that's a much happier discussion. Marriage has been around for a very, very long time. The earliest recorded evidence of marriage ceremonies date from about 2350 BC. And over the next several thousand years, marriage evolved into a widespread institution embraced by various cultures for various different reasons. So let's stick with recent history because it's much easier. Because it wasn't until a few hundred years ago that the entire concept of marriage changed dramatically. In the 19th and 20th centuries, and way before that, people often married to gain property rights, livestock, to have general wealth, or to move up in social class. Marriage was a stepping stone. Eternal love and romance as a reason for marriage? Those ideals didn't come around till the late 1800s. I want you to think about that for 1 second. At some point in your own lineage, it is most likely that your great-great-great-great-grandmother married your great-great-great-great-grandfather, not because of the cut of his jib or true love, but probably because he owned property and some cows or goats. Or he married your great-great-great-great-grandmother because of her dowry, which probably included property or some cows or goats, maybe some chickens, who knows? In other words, you are alive today because the marriage made sense for other reasons than love and commitment. It's really not a very romantic thing to think about, but it is absolutely the truth of where we are in the world. So fast forward to today and the institution of modern marriage, the modern day version of love, right? It includes phrases like wedding vows, like till death do us part, in sickness and in health. That's how we know marriage today. A modern institution of two people who love each other and want to commit to that love. It's a beautiful thing. Now, when we have a wedding ceremony, we say those words like in sickness and in health, and we think we mean them when we say them at the altar or in front of the judge. But do we really? My father was not a man of many words, but when he did talk, what came out was usually something to pay attention to. He was married to my mom for over 50 years, father of 4 children. He was a cliche Midwestern working man, as you can picture. He was Fred Flintstone. He went to General Motors every day for his shift with his lunch pail, and he came home to his family. Wash, rinse, repeat. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He didn't fool around. He didn't have any hobbies. He just took care of his family and he worked. He led through example and work ethic, not words. But on the day of my wedding, my dad came up to me right before I walked out into the church, right in the back room, and he grabbed me and he wiped my shoulders and he straightened my tie and he put his hands on my shoulder and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Don't just say the words in your wedding vows. Anyone can say it. Mean them. Because if you mean it, that's how you'll keep your marriage alive." Now, of course, my dad was right. And of course, when you're young and you're nervous, you don't really understand things that deep. And that's because the truth is, it's not until much, much later that you've been married for such a long period of time and been through so many ups and so many downs, and the good years and the not so good years, and you finally understand that the true meaning of those words you spoke, and then my dad's message, because you stuck together for all those years, ultimately because you do love each other and for a million other reasons, but you forgot what you said on your wedding day. And over time, you forgot all those reasons and all those years ago why you got married in the first place. Until one day you get sick. And they find that fist-sized tumor in your colon. And your doctor begins that cancer speech, and right there with you is your wife. And she's holding your hand. She's listening to the doctor while your brain drifts to the dark thoughts. How's your family going to get by? How are you going to pay the bills? How are the kids going to grow up without a dad? And then they stick you on that surgical table for that 10-hour surgery, and they rip the evil out of your guts. And you wake up and you see that person that you married sitting there right next to you, and they're holding your hand. And they're telling you you're going to be all right. But you know that the past 10 hours had been pure hell for them, pure hell. Waiting to know if you're going to live or die. Then they tell you you're going to have chemotherapy. And your wife says, "I'm not letting you go by yourself." Over months and months to every appointment. And she sits patiently by your side in a cold, sterile room, and they pump that poison into your body. Because they're trying to kill that cancer that's trying to take you away from your family. And she doesn't have a complaint. Ever. One time after you're getting treatment, you're walking to the car and you realize you're bleeding out all over the place. You're half a mile from the nurse's station in a parking lot. Your wife throws you in a wheelchair and pushes you down to the nurse's station so you don't bleed out. She's completely out of breath, exhausted, but there's a smile on her face to the nurses. And all the while, she's still holding that 80-pound bag, medical notes, instructions, directions, doctor's names, medications lists. And of course, your favorite snacks, your drinks that she thoughtfully shopped for and packed for you, just in case you wanted them during the day. So you forget those words from your wedding vows until the first night home from the hospital after surgery. And it's the worst night of your life in pain. And your wife never leaves your side. She does everything she can to get you through the agony that you're experiencing. You finally pass out and you wake up the next day and she's there sitting right next to you, and she's still holding on to you, rubbing your head. And you realize that she never slept. Not a wink. Because you forget the words you spoke in your vows all those years early until those things happen. And you know what? You feel like a fool. You'd forgotten the person you chose to be with was forever going to be there with you in all those times. And that's when the guilt comes, the guilt of remembering all the times you acted like a jerk, where you didn't appreciate them, where you made them feel bad for some stupid reason. Ego. Every single moment of all the wrong things you said or did come flashing back in your brain, and it sits like an anchor on your heart. It crushes you with remorse, stabs you. And that's when you make a pact with yourself. A pact that you're going to be a better husband, you're going to be less selfish, and you're going to try to remember that this amazing person actually stuck with you in your darkest hour, and how lucky you are that anyone would do that for you, really. Because marriage isn't linear, right? It goes backwards, it goes forwards, it takes us on a roller coaster ride. It makes us sick sometimes, but it also thrills us. Because your partner, your spouse, is not just your wife or husband or partner. They're really your angel. And they were sent down to watch over you and to take care of you. And the minute you realize that is the minute you can begin to thank your lucky stars that there is a person in this world that cares enough for you. And you finally start appreciating what you have. And that's when you know what those words truly mean. And that's when you know when you're truly loved. And that's what my dad meant on my wedding day. Thank you.